Hello, welcome to the self-learning platform by Dr. Sushma Singh. Today we are going to start Unit 4, Democratization and Changing Nature of Indian Society. And our topic is liberalization, poverty, and social change. Although the major Indian political parties contrived to mobilize the poor on the basis of community and not class, this does not mean that the economic differentiation has ceased to be criteria to understand Indian politics. Except in Kerala and West Bengal, the unorganized majority of the poor peasantry, agricultural labor, artisans, and workers in informal sectors have become dependent on social welfare programs sponsored by the central government. Even the redistributional program introduced in the early 1970s at the height of the Garibi Hatao campaign could not make any significant impact because of lack of commitment. In the 1990s, the state in India has embarked upon the path of liberalization. It was partly a response to depleting foreign exchange reserve and partly under pressure from world financial institutions, namely World Bank and IMF. The Indian state capitulated under pressure from Western financial institutions into policy formation and running of state. Liberalization is primarily beneficial to upper and middle classes. An estimated 40 million Indians are living the lifestyle comparable to their counterparts in advanced industrial economies. Another 60 millions are on the threshold of comfortable middle class living. This middle class is going to proliferate because of the proliferation of the service sector and white collar jobs. There is a fear that it may further aggravate the condition of rural and urban poor. The Indian state has been ineffective in creating human base for development. The lack of basic education, gender rights, health facilities, and employment opportunities for a big chunk of the population does not go well with the goal of economic justice. Marginalized groups who are not organized are not in a position to pressurize the state to fulfill its welfare commitments. The imperatives of the economic liberalization are identified with an aggravation of conflict between economic and political interest of the disadvantaged. Liberalization is creating avenues for business and white collar jobs to IIT and IIM professionals. This suits the interest of the upper and middle class because they have the withdrawal like capital to benefit from new business opportunities opening up as a part of liberalization package. The youth from these sections are more likely to walk away with job in multinational corporations with astronomical salaries because of their access to quality education. With privatization and disinvestments becoming order of the day, the number of jobs in public sector are going to be less and less. The benefit of reservation is available only in government jobs. That is why many Dalit leaders look at liberalization as a conspiracy to deny them the benefit of reservation. Economic development so far has failed to create enough jobs to absorb the landless and rural and urban educated. These people have to suffer deprivations of various kinds. Agricultural laborers, marginals, and small peasants with small or no patch of land are the most deprived section of society. They suffer more than others from poverty and lack of education, health, and housing facilities. Now, let us move to the next point, Human Development Index and reality. Social and economic development in India is marred with wide prevalence of poverty, inequality, social injustice, and poor quality of life. Despite remarkable achievements on the front of economic growth and political democracy, India has entered the 21st century with low per capita income, intolerably low level of literacy, and a very low position on the World Index of Human Resource Development. In the early 60s, the Planning Commission formulated the concept of poverty line. Below this line were people whose consumption, especially of food grains, did not come up to a minimum level in terms of calories. In 1971, nearly 59% of the population was living below poverty line. Since then, poverty has been registering a steady decline. In 1994, it stood at 36%. Nearly 3 million people, equal to the population of India at the time of independence, are still below poverty line. Another fact about poverty is that it varies from area to area. In Bihar, nearly 63% people are below poverty line, despite the anti-poverty programs launched by the government because of the corruption. The main brunt of poverty is borne by poor peasants, agricultural laborers, and the urban poor. The problem of poverty is further compounded by the existence of glaring social and economic inequality. While the poor have not become poorer, actually, they have benefited from economic growth. The gap between the poor and rich has widened and is likely to widen further in the age of liberalization. The fruits of development have been and are being disproportionately cornered by the upper and the middle class. In the latest Index of Human Development compiled by the United Nations Development Programme in 1999, India was ranked 132 out of 147 countries covered. Life expectancy at birth, infant mortality rate, and literacy, among other things, has been taken into account while compiling this index. A comparison of the record of colonial period with post-independence periods makes us realize that India's achievements have been credible, but a comparison with even our neighboring countries reveals that we are lagging far behind them in regard to these important areas. An Indian's life expectancy at the time of birth was 32 years in 1950. It went up to 63 years in 1998, which seems to be quite impressive. But it was 69.8 years and 73.1 years in 1997 in China and Sri Lanka, respectively. Infant mortality rate per thousand live birth, which was 227 in 1941, had fallen to 71 in 1997. However, it was much lower for China, that is 38, and for Sri Lanka, it is 17 in 1997. Another sad fact about India is that too much women still die at the time of childbirth. The current maternity mortality rate per 100,000 live birth in India is as high as 507 compared to 95 in China and 140 in Sri Lanka. But the biggest problem faced by India is persistence of high literacy. In 1952, nearly 82% of Indians were illiterate. Even in 1997, it was as high 38%. The comparative figure for China and Sri Lanka were as low as 17.1 and 9.3% respectively. Moreover, the gender gap in case of literacy was astonishingly high. In India, nearly twice as many women being illiterate as men. A tangible outcome of the democratic process launched in India after independence clearly seems to be that it was succeeded in giving a voice to the marginalized. Around the middle of 1990s, there has been an upsurge in political organizations and electoral participation of the disadvantaged group. The Congress party, which shield away from the giving proper representation to the disadvantaged, is facing routes in many parts of the country. Parties have tried to correct the imbalance in representation. The most conspicuous outcome of the long process of social churning has been increase in representation of lower caste in government, more particularly at regional and local level. The balance of power has shifted from the hands of upper caste to the backward and the lower caste. Another significant development is the rise of BJP to national power supported by the middle and upper caste. This social bloc has potential of denying the gains from the democratic upsurge of the lower caste. The BJP's commitment to the India as a Hindu nation has led to redefinition of Indian nationalism by giving a distorted meaning to secularism. It is backward looking and upper caste dominated and seems very appealing to the elite and educated Indians whose interest is threatened by popular movement and lower caste assertions. Now let us have a look at the summary of the unit. To sum up, it can be said that democratization, more particularly universal adult franchise, more or less free and fair elections, mobilization of the disadvantaged section of society has played a very important role in replacing an order dominated by the upper caste. This has changed the complexion of our parliament and government with more and more representatives from the disadvantaged sections. The Dalits, minorities, and the women have started raising questions about who is responsible for their grinding poverty. They have benefited from their movements and organizations and have learned to extract gains from political parties in exchange of their support. Here we want to wind up today's lecture and we have come to the end of the unit. Thank you so much for your attention.